The rain poured relentlessly over Chicago, turning the city into a blur of neon lights and slick streets. It was past midnight, and the hospital waiting room was a sterile cage of flickering fluorescents and worn-out chairs. Isabella Torres sat, alone, her hands clenched around a cold cup of vending machine coffee, her dark eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. Her father, Miguel, lay in a room down the hall, his heart failing faster than the doctors could manage. The transplant list was a mile long, the bills were suffocating, and every tick of the clock felt like a countdown to losing the only family she had left. Her mother had died when she was 6, leaving her and Miguel to navigate the world together, a world that now seemed determined to tear them apart. Isabella was a bartender at a dimly lit jazz club in the Loop, pouring drinks for strangers, while juggling a second job as a delivery driver. 3 months of sleepless nights, hospital visits, and begging insurance companies had drained her. She was 26, with no savings, no safety net, just her father's stories of San Juan beaches and his stubborn belief that she'd make something of herself. Now, those stories felt like cruel echoes as his heart monitor beeped weakly down the hall. The waiting room door swung open, cutting through the hum of the hospital. A man stepped inside, shaking rain from a tailored black overcoat. He was tall, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like polished obsidian, carrying an air of quiet dominance that made the room feel smaller. Isabella barely noticed at first, too lost in her spiral of worry, until he stopped a few feet away and spoke. "You're Isabella Torres." Her head snapped up, startled. "Do I know you?" "No," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "But I know about your father, and I can help." She set the coffee down, her hands trembling slightly. "Who are you?" He didn't smile, didn't flinch, just held her gaze. "Julian Blackwood. Blackwood Enterprises." The name hit her like a shockwave. Everyone in Chicago knew Blackwood Enterprises, the conglomerate that owned skyscrapers, tech startups, and half the city's real estate. Julian Blackwood was a legend, a billionaire whose name appeared in headlines but whose face was rarely seen. And now he was here, in a hospital waiting room, talking to her. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Stepped closer, his presence overwhelming but not aggressive. "Your father needs a heart transplant. The waiting list is brutal, and time isn't on his side. I have connections, surgeons, private donors, ways to bypass the system. I can get him the heart he needs, and I can make it happen fast." Hope flickered in her chest, fragile and dangerous, but suspicion roared louder. "Why would you do that? You don't know us." Julian's eyes didn't waver. "I don't offer help without a price. I need something from you." Her stomach twisted, a cold dread settling in. "What?" "One night," he said, his voice cutting through the hospital's hum like a blade. "Spend one night with me, and I'll ensure your father gets the transplant. The bills will be paid. He'll live." The words hit like a freight train. Isabella's breath caught, her mind spinning. She stood, her hands shaking, fury and disbelief warring inside her. "You're serious? You're trying to buy me?" "It's a transaction," he said, his tone as cold as the rain outside. "You give me what I want. I give you what you need. Your father survives. You decide." She wanted to scream, to throw the coffee in his face, to tell him he was a monster. But the image of her father's gaunt face, the tube snaking into his arms, the doctor's grim warning, "He has weeks, maybe days," stopped her. Her knees buckled, but she caught herself on the edge of the chair, refusing to show weakness. "Why me?" she demanded, her voice trembling but fierce. "You could have anyone." For the first time something flickered in his eyes, something raw, almost vulnerable, gone in an instant. "I saw you," he said, "at the jazz club 2 weeks ago. You were working the bar, laughing with a regular who was falling apart, covering his tab when he couldn't pay. You didn't have to do that. Most people wouldn't." She remembered that night, a grizzled old musician, down on his luck, his hands shaking as he apologized. She'd slipped her own tips into the register to cover his bill, thinking no one saw. "So, what? You think that makes me your charity case?" "No," he said. "It makes you someone worth making a deal for." The rain pounded against the hospital windows, the sound filling the silence between them. Isabella's mind raced. She hated him, hated his calm, hated the way he stood there, like her world wasn't crumbling. But she thought of her father's voice, singing her to sleep as a child, teaching her to dance in their cramped apartment, promising her she'd always be enough. She couldn't let him die. If I do this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, you get him the transplant first, and I want proof. Julian nodded, as if he'd expected it. The arrangements are already in motion. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with details. The surgery will happen within the week. You'll see the proof. She glared at him, tears burning her eyes. If you're lying, I'll hunt you down. I don't care who you are. I don't lie, he said simply. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. My driver will pick you up. He turned and walked out, leaving her alone with the rain and the weight of her decision. The next evening, Isabella stood in front of her cracked bathroom mirror, her hands trembling as she zipped up a simple black dress. It was the only thing she owned that wasn't jeans or a work uniform. Her reflection looked like a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed but defiant. This was for her father. She'd walk through fire for him. At exactly 8, a sleek black car pulled up outside her run-down apartment building. The driver, a quiet man in a suit, opened the door without a word. Isabella slid inside, her heart hammering. The city blurred past as they drove, the rain softer now, like it was whispering apologies. The car stopped outside a glass tower, its penthouse glowing like a distant star. The elevator ride was silent, the numbers climbing too fast. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world of polished marble, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view of Chicago that stole her breath. Julian stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his suit as immaculate as the night before. The room was warm, with soft lighting and the faint scent of cedar, but it felt like stepping into a lion's den. You're here, he said, turning to face her. I didn't have a choice, she replied, her voice sharp. He set the glass down and crossed the room, stopping just close enough for her to catch the scent of his cologne, dark, expensive, intoxicating. You always have a choice, he said. You can leave now. I won't stop you. Your father's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. The donor heart is secured. The bills are paid. It's done. Her throat tightened, disbelief warring with relief. Then why am I here? Because I want you to stay, he said, his voice softer now, almost human. Not because of the deal. Because I want you to choose to stay. She laughed, bitter and raw. You think I'd choose this? After what you asked? I'm not a good man, Isabella, he said, his eyes locking onto hers. I've never claimed to be, but I'm honest about what I want. I saw you in that bar, and I couldn't stop thinking about you. Not just your face, your strength, your fire. I want you, not as a transaction, but as you are. Her heart pounded, anger and confusion tangling inside her. You don't know me. I know enough, he said. I know you work 2 jobs to keep your father alive. I know you give your last dollar to strangers who don't deserve it. I know you're carrying a weight that would break most people. And I know I can give you a life where you don't have to fight alone. She stepped back, shaking her head. This isn't a fairy tale. You can't buy me with money and promises. I'm not trying to buy you, he said, his voice low, but firm. I'm offering you a way out of the pain you're carrying. But it's your choice. The room was silent, except for the soft patter of rain against the windows. Isabella's mind raced. She thought of her father's smile, his hands teaching her to cook Ara's congangels, his voice promising her a future. She thought of Julian's eyes, the way they seemed to see her soul, not just her surface. She hated him, but there was something else, a pull, a spark she couldn't name. I'll stay, she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. But not because of your deal, because I want to know who you really are. For the first time, he smiled, small, unguarded thing that made him look younger, less like a billionaire and more like a man. Then let's find out together. The night wasn't what she expected. There was no rush, no pressure. They sat on a plush leather couch, the city glittering below, and talked, not about deals or hospitals, but about small things, her father's love for old salsa records, Julian's secret obsession with astronomy as a kid, the way they both hated Chicago's winter wind. The whiskey sat untouched, the tension easing with every word. Hours passed, and Isabella realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She didn't feel like a transaction. She felt seen. I'm not staying past tonight, she said, standing to leave. Testing him, he stood too, but didn't stop her. I know, but I'll be here if you change your mind. She left, the elevator ride down feeling like a return to reality. But when she stepped outside, the rain had stopped, and the city felt softer, like it was holding its breath for her. The next morning, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Your father's surgery is at 7 a.m. Northwestern Memorial. Everything's arranged. Jatha Hospital confirmed it an hour later. A donor heart had been found. The best cardiologist in the country was flying in. Isabella sat on her couch, tears streaming down her face, relief crashing over her like a tidal wave. She hadn't sold herself, but she'd stepped into his world, and it left her unsteady. The surgery was a success. Miguel woke up weak but smiling, his hands squeezing hers as she sat by his bed. "You're my miracle, Mia," he whispered. She didn't tell him about Julian. She wasn't sure she could, but the story didn't end there. Days after the surgery, Isabella returned to the jazz club, pouring drinks like nothing had changed. Except it had. The hospital bills stopped coming. A letter arrived, informing her that her father's medical debt had been paid in full anonymously. Then came the scholarship in her name, offering her a chance to study nursing, something she'd always dreamed of but could never afford. She knew it was Julian, though he never took credit. She didn't see him again for weeks, but his presence lingered in the quiet ways he reshaped her life. Then, one night, as she closed up the bar, she found a note slipped under a glass. "Meet me at the planetarium, 10 p.m. She shouldn't have gone. She told herself she wouldn't, but at 10 p.m. she was there. Standing under the domed roof of the Adler Planetarium, the stars projected above her like a private sky. Julian was waiting. No suit this time, just a dark sweater and jeans, looking almost ordinary. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The scholarship, the bills, it's too much. I didn't do it for you. Too owe me," he said, stepping closer. "I did it because I see you, Isabella, and I can't stop seeing you." She shook her head, her heart racing. "You don't get it. I don't want to be saved. I want to be enough on my own." He said, his voice raw. "But you don't have to be alone." The stars spun above them, and for the first time, Isabella let herself consider it, not the deal, not the billionaire, but the man standing in front of her, flawed and human. They started meeting again, not in penthouses but in quiet places, coffee shops, late-night diners, a bench by Lake Michigan. They talked about everything and nothing, and slowly, the walls between them began to crack. But there was a twist. One night, as they sat in a diner sharing fries, Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and froze, his face draining of color. "I have to go," he said, standing abruptly. "What's wrong?" Isabella asked, alarmed. He hesitated, then said, "It's my sister. She's in trouble." She didn't know he had a sister. He'd never mentioned her, never mentioned family at all. "Let me come with you," she said, surprising herself. He looked at her, torn, then nodded. "Okay." They drove to a run-down motel on the city's edge, the kind of place where secrets went to hide. Inside, a young woman sat on the bed, her eyes red from crying, her clothes disheveled. She looked like Julian but softer, younger, maybe 20. "Alina," he said, kneeling beside her. "What happened?" Elena's story spilled out in broken pieces. A boyfriend who'd turned abusive, debts she couldn't pay, a life spiraling out of control. Julian listened, his jaw tight, but Isabella saw something new in him, guilt, fear, a love he'd buried deep. She stepped forward, her bartender's instinct kicking in, and spoke to Alina gently, helping her calm down, promising her she wasn't alone. Later, in the car, Julian was quiet, his hands gripping the wheel. "I failed her," he said finally. "After our parents died, I was supposed to protect her, but I got lost in building an empire, and I left her behind." Isabella reached for his hand, surprising them both. "You're here now. That's what matters." He looked at her, his eyes raw. "You don't owe me anything, Isabella. You never did." "I know," she said. "I'm here because I want to be." From that night, things changed. Julian wasn't just the billionaire who'd made a cruel offer. He was a man carrying his own scars, learning to be vulnerable. They helped Alina together, getting her into rehab, finding her a safe place to stay. Isabella saw a side of Julian he'd kept hidden, and it made her heart ache in ways she hadn't expected. Months passed. Miguel recovered, his laughter filling their small apartment again. Isabella started nursing school, her days filled with purpose. Julian was there, not as a savior but as a partner, showing up with coffee during her study sessions, cooking her father's favorite recipes when she was too tired. They didn't label what they were, but it was real. One night, under the same planetarium sky where they'd reconnected. Julian took her hand. "I was wrong," he said. "That night in the hospital, I thought I could control everything, your life, my feelings, but you taught me I can't. I don't want to." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Good, because I'm not for sale." He laughed, a sound she'd come to love. "I know, but I'm yours, if you'll have me." She kissed him under the stars, the weight of their past falling away. And that was the story of a desperate night, a dangerous offer, and the woman who turned it into something real. Sometimes, love doesn't come with grand gestures. It comes in quiet moments, shared pain, and the courage to choose each other again and again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the darkest choices can lead to light, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Power for more real-life inspired tales that he'll uplift and stay with you long after the screen fades. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the smallest spark can change everything.